The regular season is officially in the books. That means it's time for the SEC tournament on the hardwood, something Jay Billis said was going to be harder to win than the national championship itself. Whether you agree or disagree, it's going to be one hell of a week in Nashville, and we're here breaking it down, previewing, predicting everything in between. Guys, welcome on in. I'm Chris Phillips. He is lead basketball analyst Dave Shumate. And again, we are fired up to talk about the 2025 SEC tournament in Nashville, Tennessee. Guys, as always, before we get going, make sure you like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Check us out via podcast, where we get your podcast. You can also find us across all social media platforms, as well as our website, secunfiltered.com. We're powered by our friends, as always, over at FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/SECU to join today and get started with $150 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. Once again, that's FanDuel.com/SECU to get $150 in bonus bets today. And once again, you want to sign up with FanDuel because, baby, we are in the postseason of college basketball. That means March Madness. It's essentially here with conference tournaments. Some are getting concluded. This one obviously beginning. You're going to want to be locked into FanDuel all season or all postseason long, I should say. Either way, guys, again, welcome. This is the 2025 SEC Men's Basketball Tournament Preview and Prediction Show. That's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to break it all down, talk about the bracket, our favorites, our sleepers, the Vegas odds from our friends at FanDuel to win it all. We'll give our predictions, everything in between. Once again, I am Chris Phillips, and he is the man that has been behind all of the basketball coverage for SEC Unfiltered this season and has done one hell of a job, if I may say so myself. My good friend, Dave Shumate, joins us once again. Dave, what's going on, man? I appreciate you taking the time. As you can tell, I'm fired up. I told you off the air a few weeks ago, man, we're getting to the end. You start getting a little antsy. Once the calendar flips to March, I got a little antsy, like you're ready for the postseason. You're ready for March Madness, my friend. We have finally made it. It is going to be an electric week at Bridgestone Arena in Nashville.
Yeah, I'm fired up about it. I mean, I think it's something we've all kind of eyed since the beginning of kind of conference play, since we've kind of really gotten started here in this historical season. A lot of things to be held out. I mean, I think with Alabama's win yesterday against Auburn, you may have another number one seed on the line there between them, maybe Florida, maybe Tennessee. I think we have some teams still having to do some work from a bubble perspective. And then I also think, does anyone make a run here in this game? And I'm not really talking about South Carolina, LSU, but does someone get a little hot and prove their seed? I mean, we've seen it last year. Auburn won the SEC tournament. They went in as a 4 seed. They won the thing. They stayed at a 4 seed. Alabama got throttled by Florida on that Friday. They stayed at a 4 seed. So, I mean, 6 seed. No. Yeah, 4. No, it was 4 seed last year. So, I mean, so it was teams just sometimes the committee, if you're kind of locked into the tournament, you can't move up or down. You can play yourself in or you can play yourself out. So that's kind of where the seed is from that perspective.
So, Dave, that being said, like you mentioned, it was a big Saturday, obviously. You broke it down, reacted to it. We saw Alabama go into Neville and beat Auburn and so many other notable results. Oklahoma beat Texas. Again, when you talk about the bubble and what that means, also what it meant for seeding in the SEC tournament was a very important day. So with that being said, Dave, let's go ahead and pull up the bracket for the SEC tournament in Nashville, Tennessee. Dave, I want your immediate reactions to this. Again, the 4 teams getting the bye. Auburn is the 1 seed, Florida as the 2 seed, Alabama as the 3 seed, and Tennessee as the 4. I'm just going to run through all of them if I can read this. It's kind of tiny print. You see Texas A&M at the 5, Kentucky at the 6, Mizzou at the 7, Ole Miss at the 8. So again, top 4 get a double bye. Those next 4 get a single bye. And then the rest of the seeds, number 9 seed Arkansas, 10 seed is Mississippi State, 11 seed Georgia, 12 seed Vandy, 13 seed, where are they at? Texas, 14 seed Oklahoma, 15 seed LSU, and 16 seed South Carolina. Dave, just when you saw the bracket, immediate reactions to the seeding. Again, a lot of this we already knew, but now that you see it on paper, what jumps out to you?
Man, initially what jumps out, and this is going to sound modest, but how far has Mississippi State fallen? I mean, going back to that game at the Hump when they were playing Alabama, probably in February. It was mid-February-ish, about a month and a half ago from that perspective. And you felt like Mississippi State was playing Alabama for that, like maybe a 3-4 seed. Now they finished 10th in the SEC. I mean, I said I was intrigued by how the standings would shake out from the 6 through 10 seeds. Mississippi State being that 10th seed, you kind of sit there. They're firmly in the NCAA tournament, but it's kind of wild how they've kind of finished late. I mean, they can't really close out some of these other games outside of Georgia. That's what initially stands out. Oklahoma getting the big win. They got a big opportunity to go beat Georgia. They got a win against Texas on the road. That'll help them. We could get a little Texas. We could get a little Lone Star showdown for the third time this year if Texas were to beat Vanderbilt in a semi-home game. And then again, South Carolina put up one more fight. I mean, you were talking on the phone in the car today how, like, South Carolina, you're not just rolling the balls out. They've been competitive, had chances against Florida, Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, Auburn, won with a 1-1 down the stretch. So those are some interesting opening round games, some bubble implications, I think, with some teams who need to, if they want to feel good on Selection Sunday, need to at least pick up a win. Some too, I think.
Yeah, I think the thing that jumps out, Dave, just looking at it at first glance is, and I saw some others say this too, but like, spot the bad game. You know, like we don't really have just a bad game. You know, like all of these have intrigue. There are storylines following all of them, no matter who wins each of these matches. Because like it just speaks to Dave, like how good the league has been all
I mean, I think
long.
the only team the only two teams, CP, that have to win the whole thing to get in would be LSU and South Carolina, which, like you said, that makes it very intriguing for what we used to call sad Wednesday.
We're
going to call it Sad Wednesday, folks.
Yeah.
It used to be 2 games. Now we got 4. It's not as sad as it used to be.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Dave, to your point, even those two teams, I mean, maybe there's less intrigue on the LSU Mississippi State side because, again, LSU fans they're locked into baseball season. It's been baseball season for over a month for them. But, I mean, South Carolina, Arkansas, man, I mean, Lamont Paris has gotten the better of John Calipari, I think, the last 3 or 4 times. So it's like, you think about how important it is for the Hogs, and I think South Carolina.
Arkansas coming off probably the most embarrassing performance of the season just not a week ago.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that one's – they all have intrigue. I think that's the thing that really jumps out. But it's interesting, Dave, not to spoil our predictions for later because we're going to get into those, but looking at this bracket, and you and I talked about this earlier, like you mentioned, I had to – it's hard not to almost go chalk. Like, I'm like, somebody from the top 4 is going to win. I don't know if that's a bold take, but at the same time, I'm like, with as deep and as good as the league has been this year, Dave, like, this feels like the year we could have 2 teams that are outside of the top 4 seeds that are in the championship. Like, that's how crazy of a year it's been. So, like, I kind of go back and forth.
That double bye is key. I mean, you go back to the last 4.
Yeah.
You go back to those, last 4 champs, Tennessee in 21 or the 2022 SEC championship tournament. They were a top 4 seed. Alabama in 23. Auburn last year was the 4 seed.
It's obviously a huge advantage.
So big.
Yeah, it's obviously a huge advantage. Dave, when you look at the bracket, who do you feel like got a favorable path and who got the most difficult path of each of these teams? Are there any that jump out?
4 seeds?
Well, just or anybody else for that matter. But I guess certainly the top 4, the favorites.
Favorable? I would say because the side of the bracket and the way they're healthy right now and the way they're clicking, again, they're the 2 seed. You should get a favorable matchup until technically if you go chalk the championship game. But Florida, I think, I mean, they'll face either one of 3 teams of LSU, Mississippi State, with LSU, Mississippi State winner going on to face Missouri, the 7 seed, who you can imagine, you can say what you want. Todd Golden's probably going to have his team thinking, hey, like, we got to go win some games to lock in this 1 seed. Whether that be true or not, we'll talk about that one in a little bit. But you also add in, think about it, CP. If it's Missouri, Todd Golden probably didn't have to get his team that fired up because that's one of their losses they would try to redeem when Missouri came in, when everybody was still, myself including, questioning the Tigers, went into the O-Dome, into Gainesville, and handled Florida and gave them one of their bigger slappings around they've had all year. Again, I say that. I think Florida's playing the best basketball of anyone in the country right now, as we say. Right now, they're as healthy as they've been. They look dominant against Ole Miss. Impressive win on the road in Tuscaloosa in the midweek. Yeah, I think they're that second 1 seed right now into the SEC, heading into the SEC tournament. But I think they have a very favorable matchup because they get Missouri. I think Bama, they get Bama next potentially, or Kentucky. I think those are very good matchups for them. And then, who knows, we've seen them win at Neville already. If they get Tennessee again, I like Florida's path right now from a matchup perspective.
How about most difficult? I feel like you mentioned Tennessee. I think they've got a pretty tough path. I mean, it's Buzz Williams in Texas A&M potentially. I mean, they've lost to Vandy obviously already. Maybe the Texas Longhorns, but I look at Tennessee, probably the top 4 is the most difficult path. Would you agree?
I would agree. Just think about it. If they got Vanderbilt, I mean, Vanderbilt should have beat them twice this year. Vanderbilt did beat
them. And the game's in Nashville. I mean, the game's
– and the game in Knoxville, Vanderbilt blew a double-digit lead. I mean,
Yeah.
Edwards is keeping them in it. A&M, I mean, we've seen that. I mean, they have a tournament style of play, in my opinion. Buzz Williams always does a phenomenal job in this tournament. I mean, go look at Buzz Williams' record in the SEC tournament. They play some dudes. They have roles. Again, CP, we know this. In tournament style of play, you're not going to shoot 40% from three every night. You're not. So you're going to have to go win in other ways. Well, they're accustomed to doing that. They put up a lot of shots with Zurich, Phelps, Wade Taylor, and the rest of the guys like Henry Coleman, Anderson Garcia, Pharrell Payne. Those guys crash the board and get second chance buckets. I mean, that's their style. I think it plays well in a tournament setting where you're playing multiple games in a short period of time.
So, Dave, as again, we look at the bracket, you mentioned NCAA tournament implications, whether it's teams fighting for their postseason lives, they're fighting for seeding like a one seed. I'm curious to get your take because, again, there's teams on the bubble that I think are fighting to secure their spot, right? Not to be left out. And like you mentioned, like a Florida, potentially could use the motivation if we got to lock this in. They might already be a one seed, probably are. But we saw last year with Auburn, Dave, and you've talked about this a lot. Like Auburn wins the SEC championship. They don't even move a seed line. So, like, who's on the bubble right now? Like, when you look at this, what are the NCAA tournament implications going into this week in Nashville? And is it as big of a deal as maybe some of us want to make it out to be? Like, do you think a few wins in Nashville can change a whole lot? Because we've seen it not do that.
I think it can for the teams that are fighting to get into the tournament. I think if you're locked into the tournament, now, again, I think there's going to be a conversation to be had. Who gets that last one seed from the SEC? Because I think Auburn, Duke, and I think they're going to give the other one to Houston, who's won the Big 12, which I don't have an argument for that. I don't have a problem with that. I think it's going to come down to Florida and Alabama. Again, I think it's probably in Alabama's best interest to play Florida again. If Florida were to lose probably on Friday, hypothetically, to Missouri again, and Alabama went and won, lost on Saturday or lost on Sunday, I still think they'd give it to Florida for the nod a little bit. Just, I mean, again, there's something to be said. They went on the road and won in Alabama's building. So I think you got to give them the nod there. I think they're 3-1 against the elite other teams in this league. Auburn, they won. They beat Alabama, lost to Tennessee once, but beat Tennessee. So they're 3-1 against the top four in the SEC in their four matchups. I think that's potentially on the line there. That's an interesting storyline. And I still think, teams like Vanderbilt's net concerns me a little bit. I think Vanderbilt's in. Don't get me wrong. If you made me bet, I think they're in. But you got to think, CP. I mean, their net right now is sitting – it's lower than Texas's. Vanderbilt is sitting at 43. Texas is at 42. Arkansas at 39. Georgia at 30. Georgia's in. Theirs is more of a seed line thing. But, yes, I think some of these teams – I think if you're in the tournament already, you're not going to move much. Maybe outside of Alabama – in Texas. Like I said, Auburn won the tournament, didn't move a seed line. Alabama lost in the first round, in the quarterfinals, didn't move a seed line. They had the same seed. Some would argue Auburn had a tougher draw last year. But no, I mean, I think it just depends on the setting. But I do think those big key games on Wednesday, they could be in Vanderbilt's best interest to win unless there's some bid stealers. Remember, guys. But I feel good about the doors. I think Oklahoma and Texas are the two teams to really watch. And I think Arkansas, again, is that team. You don't want to go have a loss to South Carolina this late. And that means, think about it, Chris, you would know. That'd be 2 losses to South Carolina, technically the worst team in the league. Call them competitive all you want. You'd have lost to them twice in about a 2-week period.
Yeah, Arkansas needs it. I think you mentioned, Dave, too. Oklahoma and Texas. Obviously, they closed out the season against each other. Oklahoma beat the Longhorns and potentially ended Texas's chances at March Madness and maybe ended the Rodney Terry era if they do not go on a bit of a run or win a few games in Nashville. And think about this, Dave, too. I mean, we were just talking about the bracket, the potential of getting a Texas A&M rematch. What was the last game? I think the one that was the one
Texas blew because they opened up.
One they blew, right? Yeah,
they opened up conference play.
And A&M beat the heck out of them. Yeah. God, what a game! Would love to get that one. But I would agree with you, Dave. I think Texas and Oklahoma are the two big ones because I think South Carolina, LSU,
Georgia's in. I think Vanderbilt is in.
I think Vandy's in. Yeah,
I think Arkansas is in, but you would not want to lose to South Carolina again. You'd be a little nervous heading into Sunday if you lose again to South Carolina.
Weak bubble, though. Weak bubble will help.
Yeah. I think the other two got to win 2 games.
Yeah.
Oklahoma.
Dave, let's again, we've mentioned our friends over at FanDuel. Let's talk a little gambling, Dave, because we do have SEC tournament odds. We've published these all across social media, but let's pull them up here. Odds to win the SEC tournament. And if you're having trouble reading that, I'm going to go down this list here from top to bottom, from favorites to least favorite. Auburn sits at plus 150, Florida plus 320, Bama plus 370, Tennessee plus 500, Kentucky plus 3,000, A&M plus 3,000, Mizzou plus 4,000, Ole Miss plus 6,500, Mississippi State plus 6,500. You got Texas, Georgia, Arkansas, Vandy, Oklahoma, South Carolina, and LSU, Dave, all at plus 25,000. So if you want to go super long shot, you can. Dave, just rattling off those odds, and when you look at the board, obviously Auburn's the favorite, but what do you see on this board in regards to value plays? I know you and I both agree. I think Florida plus 320, there's good value there. I think if you want to go with an even longer shot, I mean, dude, maybe like an A&M plus 3,000. Like we've seen Buzz Williams and them get hot. I mean, I maybe A&M plus 3,000. I don't know. Kentucky,
mine, man.
Did I? Okay. Well, I mean, great minds think alike, Dave.
Florida's a good one. I agree with you. A&M.
What do you think about Kentucky? What do you think about Kentucky? Are they too banged up to get it done?
They're banged up, shorter bench a little bit right now. I don't know if they could go the whole way to win the thing. Missouri's another team. They're a team. I talked about A&M being built for a tournament.
Mizzou plus 4,000, man.
I mean,
don't let Bates and Grill get hot.
If you're looking for a value pick, Dennis Gates' squad, I mean, they play 9-10 dudes. And again, in this tournament setting where they're going to have to go win 4 games in a row, you're going to need a deep bench there. They force a lot of turnovers. Again, very tournament-style built roster, which is good for this late in the year. And they've had a hell of a regular season, too. I would probably say the 2 value picks would be A&M, Missouri. Yeah, A&M at plus 3,000 and Missouri at plus 4,000. You're right. And in the upper part of the league, yeah, I mean, Florida plus 320 would be my pick as well. I don't like Tennessee at plus 500. I don't really like Kentucky at plus 3,000 either. It wouldn't shock me if Kentucky got to Saturday, though.
Hey, Bama plus 370?
Don't hate it, but again, like I mentioned, I don't like the matchup against Florida. Yeah. And again, I think at that point for some of those teams. Now, again, if that's for a 1 seed, that'll be interesting. That'll be the storyline for that game to get viewership. It'll just depend what the committee thinks. I mean, Chris, let's put it into some logic ways here. Say Alabama beats Florida on Saturday in the semifinals. Bama goes on, loses in the SEC championship game to say, let's say Auburn, Tennessee, I don't know, A&M. So let's just say neither one of them win it. Bama won the recent. Florida just won last week, less than a week ago on Wednesday in Tuscaloosa. Who are you giving the nod to? I mean, Bama, they're right about the same at the net, give or take a spot or two. I think Florida right now is 4. Bama's at 6. Let me confirm that. Florida's at 4. Yep. Bama's at 6. Tennessee's at 5. Let's say that. Who are you giving the nod to out of those 2 teams? One team went and won on the road. One did a neutral floor. And let's factor this in, too, before I contradict myself. If Tennessee won the SEC tournament, they would be in that for sure 1 spot as well.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Certainly a fight for seeding, a fight for pride, a fight for bragging rights, really everything in between. Auburn, obviously, the regular season champions. Hey, can they double up? Can they win both the regular season title and the SEC tournament title? And go back-to-back, by the way, because they won it last year. Dave, before we get going again, we just talked the FanDuel odds. Before we get into our predictions, we lock in game by game. I want to talk to you about our friends over at FanDuel, guys, because, again, March Madness is essentially here. This bracket season, FanDuel is letting you make the call because right now new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to bet on everything from clutch shots to last-second heartbreaks and even who's cutting down the nets. If you've been waiting to join, there's no better time. There's tourney action almost every day, and FanDuel has amazing bet types like spreads, totals, game props, and so much more. Again, guys, you just heard us talk about what we like in the SEC tournament. I think A&M's a good long shot. We like Florida as a value play. Maybe there's some value Mizzou. You can bet on all of that right now at FanDuel. And, guys, of course, they're going to have daily line spreads. We're going to get that out there for you. You're going to know exactly what to bet on. You're going to get Dave and I's picks just like you have every single day. Dave, we're going to break the bookie this March Madness. We're going to break the bookie this postseason. I feel good about it, guys. And you should as well. Tail us or fade us, whatever you want to do. Visit FanDuel.com/SECU and get in on the college hoops action all tourney long. Guys, must be 21 and up and present in select states or 18 and up and present in D.C. First online real money wager only, $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino, LLC. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit FanDuel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts or call 1-8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. And my friend, Mr. Shumate, that is how you do a brand new ad read without a freaking hiccup, my man.
There we go, FanDuel.
Shout out to FanDuel. Again, we're going to be pumping them up all March Madness, as you can imagine, guys. The entire tournament, they're going to have everything you need there. Okay, that being said, let's get into it. Again, we've talked the bracket, Dave. We've talked the favorites. We've talked sleepers. We've talked tournament implications. Let's lock in some predictions, man. We're going to try to do the impossible, essentially, which is predict the SEC tournament, because if this season, Dave, has been any indication of what the week in Nashville is going to be like, I feel like this is kind of a preview of March Madness when you crumple up your bracket after like day 1 or day 2. I have a weird feeling that's how I'm going to feel. Like we get to Thursday and I'm like, I completely just missed on everything. I don't know what I'm talking about. We're just along for the ride. That being said, we've got Dave's picks. We've got my picks. Dave, you want to start with you? We'll pull up your bracket first. Your game by game. Let's do it. All right, we're going to pull up Dave Shumate's game by game predictions for, that's not it. There we go. For the SEC tournament. And here they are. So Dave, I want you to walk me through first. Let's talk about the first round. Obviously, you got South Carolina, Arkansas getting the day going. Texas, Vanderbilt after that. State, LSU. Oklahoma, Georgia. Who were your picks and why?
Look, I'm not bold enough to pick Lamont and the boys to go get back-to-back wins over the Razorbacks. Wouldn't shock me.
He owns him. He owns him now. He owns him.
The Razorbacks will advance to Thursday. Texas, Vandy. I think Vanderbilt's just a better basketball team. I think Mark Byington does a really good job with them this year. I think he should have been up for Coach of the Year, not named Bruce Pearl again. Dennis Gates as well. I just think Texas, man, I think it's just going to work itself out. They'll have a new basketball coach next year. I think this will be their last game of the regular season. Give me the Doors advancing in a semi-home game. Mississippi State beats LSU. I feel good about that one. They played about a week ago. A little scrappy game for Mississippi State at home. I think State advances. Oklahoma, Georgia. This was a little bit of a toss-up to me here. I mean, how do they defend Jeremiah Fears, Mike White, and them? I don't know. It's interesting. I'm going to go Georgia here. Wouldn't shock me. Georgia's in the tournament no matter what. I think they're kind of fighting between a 10-11 seed. Again, and we know sometimes those 11 seeds are playing games. But I'm going to go Georgia here. This is the one I'm kind of conflicted on the first night. The other games, I'll be a little shocked if State didn't win, if Vandy didn't win, if Arkansas didn't win. The late night when it could be a total toss-up because you do have some true scores there with Jeremiah Fears, Kobe Elvis, and Jalen Moore with Oklahoma. And they're playing well, and they're fighting. They know they need 2 or 3 tournament wins as well. So Georgia may breathe a little bit. You know what I mean, CP? They may come in. They got their 8th conference win, which was the magic number where you're not even questioned in. And again, they're not fighting over a 10 or 11 seed. They may breathe when they get to Nashville. Could be wrong, but I think Oklahoma, I would hope, if I'm Porter Moser, would be the more desperate team coming into that matchup.
Yeah, because I would assume your predictions, Dave, Texas and Oklahoma's seasons would be ending in Nashville. Would not.
Yeah, that's one I would not be shocked if Oklahoma wins. I feel pretty confident in the other 3. They get it done. Moving to Friday, it's my first upset. I'm going to go the Backs playing well. I mean, February was a total nightmare for them. They turned it around essentially the last 2 weeks or so. Getting it rolling here Arkansas's been playing well in February. I'm still talking Georgia. Georgia was the team that had the nightmare February. Even for Arkansas, even some of their losses, February was fine. I think they beat Ole Miss. I think they get a big win here. I think they advance here. Again, shorter bench, shorter roster now. It's not totally built for a tournament run, especially getting a Saturday or Sunday. But I think Arkansas advances. I think Vanderbilt, like I mentioned, advances against Texas. I think A&M gets a revenge win, though. Again, these 2 teams played a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. I like A&M in the rematch here. State, Missouri. I just can't trust Mississippi State right now, man. I just can't. I mean, remember, this would be a rematch when Missouri. Me and you watched that game together. Remember Missouri went berserk? We were sitting there in the Tuscaloosa Hotel waiting for that one, and Missouri almost beat them by 40. I think it ended up being like 24 or something, but still controlled it from top to bottom. I think Missouri gets that win again, advances for that rematch against Florida. Then I think Kentucky at home, I thought got one of their better wins of the season on Saturday at Missouri. I think they beat Georgia. They get a revenge game. Georgia beat them very early in conference play. I like Kentucky there, though. But again, I mean, CP, you told me how you feel. The Oklahoma, Georgia, Kentucky, kind of those three teams, it wouldn't shock me kind of who gets to Friday out of that group. I mean, all three of those games or three of those teams have pretty high floors at times, but can also play pretty bad from a high ceiling at times, but it can play from a really bad floor.
Yeah, that's a very chaotic section of the graph or of the bracket, I should say.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw Kentucky, Georgia earlier this season. I mean, and that game was insane. So, yeah, I feel like some major chaos. I will say this too, not to spoil my picks. Mississippi, I've got it's funny because I've had State fans essentially say, welcome to the family, because I'm like, I have battered Bulldog syndrome, because for some reason, there were just multiple times this season I was drinking the Kool-Aid. I picked State to beat Bama in that game you were talking about earlier. Like, I don't know. I just kind of kept going back to the well of like Mississippi State, man, they just kept letting you down, man. Like that team was so bipolar. You just had no clue what you were going to get. So, but yeah, Oklahoma, Georgia, Kentucky, that's a very chaotic section of the bracket. I mean, who knows genuinely? I mean, Bama could be playing any of those three teams.
You wouldn't be totally shy. I don't think you could say about the other top four teams, in my opinion. No. I think you'd be shocked if LSU was there, that was still there on Friday. But moving to Friday, Arkansas, Auburn. Auburn's first game. This would be Arkansas's third. Let that set in. Short bench. Bad matchup. I think Auburn will have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. This was a close game a couple weeks ago in Neville. I think Auburn takes care of business. A&M, Tennessee, again, everybody knows, like, I like Tennessee. Don't get me wrong. I don't love Tennessee. I think the offensive ceiling put too much on Zakai Ziegler, Chaz Lanier. I like A&M on a neutral floor. Again, Buzz Williams plays well in this tournament, folks. Go look it up. Since he's been at Texas A&M, they advance. They get to Saturday often. So I like A&M getting to Saturday, getting that semifinal matchup against Auburn, going to the bottom bracket. I'm telling you, CP, if Missouri was in another bracket, if they were like the 5 or 6 seed, I'd like them against A&M or Tennessee. Heck, I think it's a decent matchup against Alabama if they're in Kentucky's spot. Just Florida, revenge factor for Florida, redeeming one of their losses, getting revenge. Florida's playing really well. They're as healthy as they've been all year, completely healthy. I just think Florida advances in that one. Tough break for Missouri and Lamont Dennis Gates there. And then Kentucky, Bama. I think Kentucky's a bad matchup for – can Alabama beat a team 3 times this year, though? That would be the 3rd straight win this year against Kentucky. As we know, Kentucky and Nashville, they kind of take it over. Kentucky and Auburn fans kind of take that over right now, especially Big Blue Nation. Big Blue travels. Be a semi-Kentucky home game. But, again, I just think they match up bad against Alabama. So I'll take Alabama in that one. So my semifinals, Auburn, A&M. Give me fighting Buzz Williams, baby. Give it to me. I think they beat Auburn again. I think Auburn's a little banged up. Wouldn't shock me, obviously, if Auburn advanced to Sunday if they won the whole thing. Just they seem a little banged up right now. I'll be interested to see how they come out in their first matchup Friday, but I think A&M gets to Sunday. I just like the way Buzz Williams and them compete in the tournament. Then I think Florida gets that win against Alabama again. Just a bad matchup. I mean, Florida's front court just hellacious with Handel gotten back now from injury. Condon, Ruben Chinyulu is a big factor there. I like Florida getting it. So that sets it up. Florida, A&M. I think Florida gets revenge for finishing runner-up last year to Auburn in the SEC tournament. I think they're playing the best basketball of anyone, not only in the conference right now, but in the entire sport. Give me the Florida Gators right now.
So Dave has Todd Golden and the Florida Gators coming out victorious in Nashville. Dave, let's pull up my selections. You're going to notice I've got the same team winning it all. How about that?
The Doors, baby, in the semi. That'll be a home game for the commies at that point on a Saturday.
So let me walk you through this, because great minds think alike, but the way that we got there was a little bit different, very different in some instances. Starting with the first round, Dave, man, I don't know what it is, and I don't know why, and I won't be surprised if Arkansas gets the win, but man, Lamont Paris.
You're going to be making Arkansas fans bite their
Dude, Lamont Paris has John Calipari's number.
Wouldn't shock me, dude. I said it in mine. South Carolina's been competitive.
Yeah, I mean, again, they're not a good team. Like, bad teams find ways to lose games. They're not a terrible team.
There's been worse last place teams.
Yes, and I mean, again, we're not trying to
Just
hey, put them in the tournament, baby. The SEC's that deep. But again, Lamont Paris owns John Calipari, so I'm going to take the Gamecocks. I'm going to give Lamont the nod. You're right; it would be an excruciating loss for Arkansas, and I think God, even when you're in, you wouldn't feel great about where you stand currently. But
to South Carolina.
Yeah, I think too, though, like you mentioned, short bench. I think they're banged up a little bit. I think South Carolina, Lamont Paris finds a way to get it done. Texas and Vandy, give me the Doors. Again, you can see on the graphic if you're watching right now. If not, if you're listening, I'm high on the Doors, high on Mark Byington going into the tournament.
Terry's last game, CP says.
Rodney Terry's last game. Yeah, I like you said, I love the way you put it, Dave. I just think it's going to work itself out. Like, at some point, you are what you are, and it's a shame that we're not going to get to see Trey Johnson in the tournament. Like, it really is a shame. Like, I'd love to see it. I'd love to see them go on a run, and Texas finds a way to sneak in, and we get Trey Johnson in March Madness. I just don't see it happening. I love this Vandy team. They're in Nashville. I think the Doors, the fan base, are going to show up. Maybe not take the building over, but I think they're going to make their presence felt. Vandy going to feed off the energy of being in Nashville. They get the win. I like Mississippi State too, Dave. I don't think LSU is a very good basketball team. And as much as I've got battered Bulldog syndrome, Mississippi State, I think, is going to beat LSU. And then, like you mentioned, Dave, Georgia-Oklahoma, to me, is the toughest game of day one to pick. It just coin flip, could go either way. I am going to go with the Dogs too, but man, Oklahoma's it wouldn't shock you either way. Oklahoma's been one of those teams that you just never know, right? And again, there is something to be said, like you mentioned, Dave, for a team that is fighting, scratching, and clawing tooth and nail for their postseason live.
They have some confidence coming into it, knowing they got to win too. Georgia could have. I mean, as you know, CP, you played. You're an athlete. Like, they kind of had that sense of we're in.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two there. Something we should have talked about too, Dave. Like, mindset in these conference tournaments, I think does matter. Like, who really wants to be there? Like even some of these coaches, like, Dave, like, you think all these coaches are going to go all out and do everything they can to win the conference tournament? I mean, unless you have to win it to get in, probably not. So I say that, like, I will not be surprised if we see like a desperate Oklahoma team and maybe a Georgia team. Like, hey, they know they're in. Like, we know we're in. It's all good.
So CP, hold on, following your bracket here, I think the two big differences we have. You have Arkansas going out the first day. I have the Razorbacks going to Friday. I've been beating Ole Miss, and then you have. We'll get to the second round in a minute, but you have Vanderbilt a little further.
Yeah, Vandy a lot further than you. So, yeah, going into the second round, I do have Ole Miss beating South Carolina. Again, there'll be happiness one day for the Gamecocks. I don't think it'll be two. So I do have Hottie Toddy beating Carolina. Vanderbilt, Texas A&M. Again, I'm high on Vandy for whatever reason. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, man. I think Vandy in Nashville finds a way. They've already done it once.
So me and you, CP, the winner of that game, we both think springboards to a big big SEC tournament.
Yes, to the semis.
Yeah, so I got A&M in the championship.
Yes, so I've got Vandy beating Texas A&M. Missouri beating Mississippi State. Like you mentioned, Dave, I just can't trust State. I can't. And I love this Mizzou team. Like you mentioned, like if they had a different matchup than Florida in the quarterfinals, I could see Mizzou being a sneaky, like we talked about the value. The value plays of winning the tournament, like Mizzou could be one of those. It's just they're going to run into, again, the team that we think is going to win this thing. And then Georgia, Kentucky, I do have the Kentucky Wildcats. This is another one, though, man. I don't feel great about it. But I do think in the SEC tournament, I think Kentucky will play some of its better basketball. Georgia maybe run out of steam a little bit if they're in this position. Whether it's Georgia or Oklahoma, I think Kentucky is going to advance to Friday. Now Friday's action, Ole Miss, Auburn. Auburn simply just a better basketball team. Like you said, they'll be well rested. They'll have the chip on the shoulder, Dave, like you mentioned, after losing to Alabama on Saturday at home. I do think Auburn gets the win. Boy, Vol fans are going to eat me alive, aren't they, Dave? Maybe eat us alive.
We know. Both of us have the balls going out.
Both of us have them going 0-1. See you later. But for me, Dave, I got Vandy beating them. That hits a little bit different. So, dude, listen. They beat him at Memorial. They should have beaten him in Knoxville. They should have beaten him in Knoxville.
They should have.
I think they get the one on the neutral floor, man. I think Mark Byington could be that thorn in the side of Rick Barnes I think he could be that. I don't know. So I don't know. I'm riding the Nashville wave. I'm riding the Vandy train.
They've played Tennessee well this year, even though they're 1-1.
They've played Tennessee very, very well. And I'm with you, Dave, too. Like, Tennessee is the team of the top 4 seeds, and going into March Madness, we'll talk more about this. They scare me the most of, like, the SEC's elites. They do, because, like you mentioned, like, they have the ability to just lay a stinker up offensively. Like, I mean, it terrifies you watching them. So, yeah, I like Vanderbilt in that spot, advancing to the semis. Florida, Mizzou, got the same pick as you, Dave. I'm going with the Gators. You and I were talking about it earlier today. When this Florida team is going, man, they are really scary. They're healthy too. And I got to see them in person a few weeks ago when they played Texas A&M in the O-Dome. Man, they looked so good. They look so good. So I'm going to go Gators. And then finally, Bama, Kentucky. I will tell you, this one scares me, Dave. This one does scare me, like you mentioned.
We both had Bama beating them 3 times.
Yeah, to beat a team 3 times.
Especially Kentucky.
This is a big one for Mark Pope, man. I think if you're Mark Pope, you don't want to go 0-3 against Bama in year one. You don't want to let a team beat you 3 times. You know what I mean? Like, that's pretty, not damning, but it just doesn't taste good. So I think that'll be a high-intensity game on Friday night. Semifinals, Auburn, Vanderbilt. This is where the run comes to an end, Dave. I do have the Auburn Tigers advancing to the championship game. Again, I just think Auburn, again, they're one of the best teams in the country. They have been all year. They're going to show that. Again, I love the Vandy story, but they won't be able to hold up against Auburn. And then Florida, Alabama, like you mentioned. Florida winning to Tuscaloosa, beat the Crimson Tide. I could absolutely see Bama winning this game, by the way. This will be maybe the best game of the tournament. Maybe Florida-Auburn in the championship, it plays out that way. But that Florida-Bama game, I think, is going to be a lot of fun, a lot of offense, a lot of points. I just got to go with the Gators, and then Gators and Auburn, man, in the title game. Like you mentioned, dude, I hate to sound like a broken record or sound like I'm copying you, but I just think when you look at the basketball Florida's playing right now, they are red hot, and I think they're the scariest team in the SEC from the standpoint of, like, when they get going, it's like I asked you earlier today, Dave, like, Florida, I think, has the highest ceiling of anybody right now, is what it looks like to me. I mean, Bama would be right there with them, but Florida's scary, man. Like, Florida's scary good.
Yeah, say now they haven't been healthy all year now. I mean, Handel gotten back, Condon been out for a bit. I mean, Elijah Martin had been hurt for a bit. I mean, now they're healthy. They're rocking and rolling, man. They're relentless. They don't really have many holes right now.
Yeah, top to bottom, one of the best teams in the country, no doubt. And again, the team that both Dave Shumate and I picking to win the SEC men's basketball tournament in Nashville, the Florida Gators. So can't wait to see, Dave, how we'll speak this into existence, how right we are, but also potentially how wrong we are, because if this season's taught us anything, it's going to be a wacky week in Nashville. And again, we're fired up for it, guys. Again, I want to remind you, by the way, we're going to be reacting to all this all week long, midday and end of day on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, because there's a lot of basketball, a lot of games. You're either going to get myself or Dave Shumate or both. We're going to react to all the ball games all day long. Again, we're going to split it up. After the first 2 games, we'll go live, talk about those. End of night after the last 2, we'll do the same thing. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Obviously, Saturday after the 2 games, you'll get us. And then Sunday after the title game, and Sunday night when we get the official NCAA tournament March Madness bracket, if you will. Dave, this is a lot of fun, man. I'm excited. Again, a very exciting week upcoming in Nashville. Final thoughts as we go into the SEC tournament. Again, the conference tournament, I think the nation is going to have their eyes on, and I think a week that more than likely is going to deliver.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of pride in this tournament. I think a lot of these coaches, just the coaches in this league is what makes it so great now. Like, all these guys take pride in winning the SEC tournament. So I think you're going to get everybody's best foot forward. And again, just pay attention to Wednesday, man. The usually sad Wednesday, usually just kind of the waiting to get to the true first round on Thursday. But now there's a lot of meaningful games in that from a seeding standpoint, from a bubble standpoint. And hey, let's see how that do we get that Bama-Alabama or Florida-Alabama showdown on Saturday in the semis for a quote-unquote, some are saying that last number 1 seed. So we'll see from that perspective. That's kind of the storyline now to follow across the board. I'm actually fired up to see how Auburn answers the bell. Got hit in the mouth this past week, 0-2, lost A&M, lost Alabama. Interested to see how they take how they'll enter Nashville. Again, I like I would be a little shocked. CP, you tell me if I'm wrong. They're not there on Saturday, though. I like their matchups. Even if it was Arkansas, that'd be Arkansas's 3rd game. to be Auburn's first. Ole Miss isn't a great matchup against Auburn. And then, I mean, if it's South Carolina, then certainly I'd be a little surprised. If you told me what would I be surprised about if happened in this tournament, if Auburn wasn't there on Saturday.
I would agree with you, Dave, and something I'm excited for selfishly. I'm excited to cover it all with you, my man. It's our first SEC tournament together doing this. Going to be absolute electric. Again, guys, all the reactions coming your way. And make sure you are staying tuned and locked in on the daily because we are going to have gambling picks. We're going to have, who knows, maybe updated predictions. You never know coming from us. Content bleeding out of the eyeballs as always. Dave, before we get out of here, let's get into a couple questions. We did have some folks on the live stream tune in live, whether it's YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. We appreciate each and every single one of you. Big Pat simply says, Dave. It's a familiar face. Y'all have seen Dave Shumate all season long. So
Big Pat, my favorite Auburn Tiger.
Big Pat in the building. BTTS, hello, guys. Question, I've been wondering, why is Texas the 13 seed when they finished 14th behind Oklahoma in the conference? Dave, can you?
Well, they had the same conference. They're both 6-12, so then they split the season series. So it goes to a tiebreaker of the highest seed, whatever their matchups were against the higher seeds. And I think Oklahoma, and I believe, looking at it now, go back to it. I believe Oklahoma got that nod, or sorry, Texas got that nod because Texas has that win, I think, over A&M, which is like the highest ranked team that both of them, because neither one of them beat Auburn, right? Right? Yeah, no. Nobody beat Florida. Nobody beat Alabama. Nobody beat Tennessee. Yeah, and then A&M's the next highest seed, and then Texas beat them, and Oklahoma didn't. So I think that's why they got the nod.
Good old SEC tiebreakers. Let's see. Jeremy Scott simply says, roll Tide. We got some Bama fans up in here. Double D says, of course, they're going to have a Texas A&M matchup if Texas beats Vandy. Because, of course, man, it's good for ratings. I mean, why not? You got to love it, Dave. Even talking basketball, Jamie says Alabama football is overrated. Thank you for that. Well, there will be a time and place for that conversation, I promise.
Alabama football is overrated.
Alabama football is overrated, yeah. Let's see. Peanut, I didn't realize Broom was kind of slow until I saw the post-game presser yesterday. I don't know if I just read that comment.
I mean, he wasn't a walking double-double. I mean, granted, had 30-plus points, had 9 boards, just missed it. I always call him a walking double-double. He didn't look at if you just look at the box score. He does look a little lingering, though. Again, Alabama played a little bit of a different strategy yesterday defensively. But, no, I mean, again, think about that, CP. If people are questioning if I'm healthy, but I'm still dropping 34.
It's not bad. It's not bad. Peanut says Georgia's won like 5 in a row. Is that correct? They on a little bit of a heater?
Georgia, I mean, down the stretch, totally flipped it around there. I mean, the month of February was terrible for them. Think about, here you go, CP. They lost 4 straight. Mississippi State at Texas A&M, Missouri, and at Auburn. And now, to our boys' point, 4 straight. Florida at Texas, at South Carolina, and Vanderbilt yesterday. So a big turnaround here in the last 2 weeks for Mike White and them. Again, they're firmly in the NCAA tournament. I think they're just really going to depend 10 or 11 seed. Probably a win, CP, gets them off the play-in game potentially.
Yeah, heck of a finish of the season for UGA. Final one here from Gunner Files says Arkansas is going to beat South Carolina, then get to beat Ole Miss in basketball and baseball both this weekend.
He's calling his shot.
Gunner says it's going to happen on the diamond and the hardwood because, again, we're talking basketball, but Arkansas travels to Oxford to take on Ole Miss to get SEC play going on the diamond. So how about that? What if they give them the double whammy, Dave? Be a fun weekend in Fayetteville.
A lot on the line on Friday, yeah. I mean, big border state war right there between Arkansas and Ole Miss.
Yeah, a lot on the line indeed. Dave, this has been a lot of fun, man. I appreciate you taking the time. It's always a pleasure. Guys, thank you all for the comments, being engaging, hanging out with us. And, again, I know we're all fired up for the SEC basketball tournament. Again, live reactions from us all week, picks, predictions, parlays, you name it. We're going to try to break the bookie and win some money. Like I said, either way, go to our friends at FanDuel. You can tail us. You can fade us, whatever you want to do. Either way, we're going to have one hell of a time covering this, breaking this all down. Again, guys, as always, make sure you like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Check us out via podcast. Where you get your podcast. You can also find us across all social media platforms, as well as our website, secunfiltered.com. For lead basketball analyst Dave Shumate, I'm Chris Phillips. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in, and we will catch you on the other side.